Okay, so we are live. Hello, everyone. This is Slim from Social Hackers Academy with Halim today as our guest. Guest speaker. Welcome everyone for this event webinar that is going to be about an introduction to Angular. And you can use the chat if you have any question related to what you will see with Halim later. Hello, Hamza. Hi, Sandra. Nice to see you here. Hi, everyone. Hi, Vlader. It's been a while. So let's wait a couple of minutes maybe for more people to join. And as always, the webinar will be recorded and it will be uploaded within 24 hours to our YouTube channel, and we will share the link on our community Discord. Hello, Panayotis. More people are joining. We missed you too, Panayotis. You are always sharing some stuff on the community Discord and especially the memes channel. Keep on doing that. And yeah, let's keep in touch. Hello, Ahmed. I see that the Boussada family is all here.
Always supporting each other.
Yeah. Okay, I think let's start. So as usual, we are having this webinar in order to introduce you to some technologies. This time it's gonna be about Angular with Halim. Halim being one of our instructors since 2 years now, more than 2 years.
Yeah, roughly more than 2 years.
Yeah, and we're always getting amazing feedback from the students that are in Halim's class. Yeah, Halim is a shy person sometimes. So, and yeah, so what we do at SHA, SHA is Social Hackers Academy for short, and we are trying to take education accessible to everyone. And right now we are running full stack web development cohorts. We are running our 25th class admissions right now. So already 25 classes so far. So we are really grateful of being part of this journey and to have amazing students as all of you. And if you are joining this webinar and you're not one of our students, you're also welcome, and we are glad to have you here so you will hear about it. So enough with the presentation. I'm giving the stage to Halim to present himself and what we are going to do today. So thank you, Halim.
Thank you very much, Slim. So hello again, everyone. My name is Halim Boussada. I'm a full stack instructor with Social Hacker Academy. I've been here for 2 years now, but I have in total more than 3 years of experience in this. Maybe I should mention that I'm a career switcher. I didn't start my journey or my studies as full stack developer, but I was studying electrical engineering, and then I decided that this is not for me. I need to switch my career, and there was a bootcamp that I joined, and here I am. And it actually changed my life. So that's why I'm doing this now. I'm really happy that I've switched my career, and I'm really happy also that I'm helping other people to do the same. And yeah, so for today's, I cannot call it session, for today's webinar.
Yes.
I used to do sessions. So for today's webinar, we will be talking, or we will be learning, or we will be creating a small application using Angular. And if you are not familiar with what Angular is, don't worry about that. You just need some basics of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and you are good to go. Okay, so this is a very beginner friendly webinar. So we will talk about what is Angular and what do we mean when we say framework, and what is the notion of components. And then we will start to create our own application. We will not create a full application, more or less we will focus on the concepts, on how to create this and this and that. And then maybe if you have some knowledge with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you will know how to create your own application. Okay, so that's what we always try to do. We don't teach you to do one thing. Instead, we will give you the tools, and then you will decide what you will build with those tools. So without further waiting, let's start. So as I mentioned, for today's session, I would like to call it session, sorry, Steve. So for today's session, we will be talking about Angular, which is a JavaScript framework. So what do we mean when we say a framework? A framework is a bunch of, let's just say, built-in functions and that we can use to not waste time creating those functions by ourselves. So let me explain it this way. Let me start sharing my screen. So,
Wh-
okay.
uh, While you are sharing your screen, so yes, if you guys have any question related to what Halim will be covering, you can write them in the chat, and I will be monitoring, and I will forward them to Halim so he can answer your question. Don't be shy, ask any question you might have. So I'm leaving the stage, and I will be jumping in when we have questions.
But I have to mention that we will have a question, don't worry. Right, so that's the best thing. That's how we learn. Right, so a framework or a JavaScript framework, as I mentioned, is a bunch of functions. Sometimes we have like a repetitive functions that we use all the time. So for example, here, let's imagine that we have a bunch of functions. So for example, it's just an example, okay? So we have the function sum, we have the function, I don't know, log, we have the function hello. Okay, so all of those functions, maybe we will need to use them repetitively in multiple projects. Okay, so what we do, instead of creating those functions again and again and again, we can call this, we can create a file, or we can create a library, okay, that we can import in our project. So we can call it in our project. So maybe this is our project. So we can call the library here. Let's call this library, for example, library Halim. Okay, so let's call this library Halim. So we can call Halim library, and we can use it in our project. So now we can use the function sum. After calling the library Halim, we can use the function sum, we can use the function log, and we can use the function hello. Okay, so this is for the library. This is the definition of a library. But what is a framework? Okay, so that's a library. So what do we mean when we say framework? We mentioned that framework is also a bunch of functions that we can use in our project. So a framework is also a bunch of functions. So for example, here we have the function by, we can have another function hello to, we can have the function sum or sub, whatever. And we can also use this framework in our project. So we can call this framework to our project, or we can create a project based on a framework. Okay, so we can call this framework, and then we can use the function by, for example, and we can use the function hello. So now the question is, if this is the definition of a library and this is the definition of a framework, what is the difference between a library and a framework? Well, the library gives you functions, to use the way that you want. Okay, so let's just say the library gives you freedom on the way of how you will create or how you will use those functions, sum or log or hello. But the framework, it will give you the functions, give you also the functions to use, but you need to use those functions, the way of the framework. Okay, so the framework will give you those functions, but it also tell you how to use those functions. You cannot be free, okay? You can't be free while using this framework, okay? So they will give you also a structure on how to use those functions, okay? It's not a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing, because it's kind of help you with the structure, with the full structure of your application, okay? So that's what we mean when we say Angular is a JavaScript framework. So Angular is a JavaScript framework. So we mean that Angular is a bunch of functions of JavaScript built in that will help you create projects in Angular way. We can call it like that, an Angular way. That means the way that Angular wants you to create the project, and the way that Angular see that this is the best way to create the project. And again, it's not a bad thing. That's the way that Google created Angular. Okay, I don't know if you have this information or not, but Angular is created by Google and React is created by Facebook. Okay, and both have their own way of creating a project. Okay, so now we will see what is the best way to create a project in, let's just say, in the opinion of Google. Okay, so that's what we will try to build now. We will try to know, or we will try to learn the logic of Angular, and then we will go and see how can we create that, or how can we apply that in terms of real examples. Okay, so now we know what do we mean by a JavaScript framework. So let's talk about another thing now. So when we are creating a project, so let's imagine that we are creating a project. So I'll open another paint. By the way, my students know that I really like to use whiteboards. So that's why, since we are online, I really like to use paint to explain things. So I hope you get used to it. Okay, so let's imagine that we want to create a page of YouTube, for example. Okay, so we want to create a page of YouTube. So let's take the example of this page. Okay, so let's have, I don't know, let's go to this one. Okay. Right, so let's imagine that we want to create this page. So this page will have a nav bar, okay, which contains some elements like a search bar here and icons here. And this page will have the main video, the comment sections, and here some extra videos. So here we will have like the videos that you will watch next maybe. So to create this code using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, if we want to create this code using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you can have maybe, and I'm saying maybe, you can have like in HTML, you will have more than, and I'm not exaggerating here if I say more than 5,000 lines of code. Okay, in CSS, you will have minimum of 10,000 lines of code. And in JavaScript, we will have basically, I don't know, 1,000 line of code of JavaScript. So imagine if you have this page on your project, how hard would it be to have or to find an error in 1,000 line of code? Imagine if you have a JavaScript code of 1,000 line and you will have an error. It's annoying to solve an error with 100 lines of code. Imagine if you have like 1,000 lines of code and you want to solve that. It's going to be a disaster, actually. So, what Angular or what Google decided, instead of creating one HTML for the whole thing, okay, so instead of creating one HTML for the whole project or for the whole page and one CSS for the whole page and one JavaScript for the whole page, we will split those elements, or we will split this page into components. Okay, so into sub components. So we can call this part the navbar. Okay, we can call it component navbar. So this will be called navbar here. So the navbar will be a component alone. That means we will have navbar.html, and then we will have navbar.css, and we will have a navbar.js. Sorry. We will have here a navbar.js. So this will be a component, and the other sections also are going to be other components. So for example, this section will be, I don't know, video section. We can call it video component. So here we can take this and we can call it video.html, video.css, and video.javascript. And this final section again will be another component. Okay, so here, this other section will be another component that we can call it, I don't know, watch list. So this is gonna be watch list component. So it's gonna be watch.html, watch.css, and watch.javascript. Okay, so why we do this? So instead of having 5,000 lines of code, we will have, with this way, for example, we will have only 300 lines of code here in navbar. So 300 lines of code. Here in watch.js, maybe we will have 400 lines of code. And here in video, we will have 300 lines of code. It's still a lot, but you get the point. Here now, if we have it this way, like multiple components, if we have an error in the video, for example, if the video is not working or the comment section is not working, I will go to the video component.javascript and I will try to find the problem in only 300 lines of code. Okay, so this will help me to identify where is the problem faster. So the structure of the application will not be something like, I will use another paint. I don't like really to erase things. So instead of having one HTML, for example, instead of having index.html and then style.css and script.js, what we will have some big component. We call it the parent component or the root component. It's called app. It's going to be app.js or an app.html and app.css. And then we will have the other components that will be displayed inside of this app. So we will have a bunch of folders, like let's call this folder, what we can call, let's take the other example. So we will have here navbar, Okay, inside of this navbar, we will have navbar.html and then navbar.css and navbar.javascript, or later on with Angular, you will see another type, which is TypeScript. It's like JavaScript, but enhanced. And then we will have video component, which contains also the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript, and as much other components as we can. And then we will decide what we will display in the app. So for example, we can say that we will display in the app the navbar, and we will display the video. Okay, and it will be displayed. So now we will only take those components and we will mention in the app. So in the app, finally, we will have navbar, and then under it, we will have, it's going to be like a tag, navbar now. Okay, and under the navbar, we will have the video. It's going to be something like this, video. And then we will have maybe the sidebar or watch list or whatever you want to call it, and maybe we will have another component footer. Okay, so if you learn React or if you learn other JavaScript frameworks like React or Vue, you should be familiar with those kinds of components knowledge, like to have multiple components, and we can use multiple components in multiple other components. Okay, so here we are just explaining the concepts for the new students. All right, so for now, this is the base logic behind the creation of the JavaScript frameworks. So JavaScript frameworks. So like React, Angular, and Vue. Not like this, like this. Okay, so all of those three frameworks are based on the same concept, dividing the components to make your application more scalable. Because if you have 5,000 lines of code and you want to add more features, it's like adding other thousands lines of code, which is, it's actually ridiculous to have this amount of code on one page. Okay, so it's unmaintainable and it's going to be spaghetti code and you cannot maintain it. Instead, try to separate as much elements as you want, as you can, sorry. And it's going to be also easier for developers. In fact, if you take this example of YouTube, this navbar, it's not the only component that it's, this one is not just one component. It's based on smaller components like this navbar or this search bar, those icons here, the button here, the sidebar. This is another component. It's going to be like a tree. So if you take this example, it's going to be like a tree. So the navbar will be displayed in the app.js, but also the navbar have other child components. Like for example, the navbar will contain search bar, okay, search component, which contains HTML of search, CSS of search, and JavaScript of search. We will have icons, or whatever we want to call this side. Okay, it's icons, but it do contain a lot of functionality. So we go back here, icons, which contains also HTML, CSS, JS, also the sidebar, which contains HTML, CSS, and JS, and all of those are displayed in the navbar, and later on, the navbar will be displayed in the app. So here you see how the code will be divided. So now this search will contain maybe 100 lines of code. So will contain 100 lines of code. And this icon will contain 100 lines of code. Or here, let's write it down here. Okay, and this sidebar also will contain 100 lines of code. So now you will see how the things are divided. And if we have a team of developers that will be working on this project. So you can just mention you developer. So the first developer will take the search functionality and the styling and the HTML, and the other developer will take the icons, and the other developer will take the sidebar. So you will not end up having 5 developers working on the same code, on the same 1,000 lines of code. So you can separate the concerns, like you can create separate files for each smaller part on the page. And that's what the big companies do, like Google or Facebook or whatever website that you see. Those are smaller components that a whole team will manage. Of course, you cannot, like developers cannot create like a huge project by themselves. They need a team. They will be working in a team, and it's not logic to have 7 people working on the same HTML and CSS and JavaScript. So we need to separate the things, and we need to create like a component for each part. So now, without further waiting, let's start with our example, or let's see how can we create our Angular application, or how can we start our Angular app. All right, so first thing first that I want to mention is, guys, do not be afraid of reading the documentation. So when you are trying to learn new technology, try always to go to the official documentation. For example, for Angular, it's angular.io. This is the official documentation of the technology. I know it may look a little bit boring to read things. We are developers, I say it all the time, like developers are lazy. We don't like to do the things the hard way. But if you want really to advance in a specific technology, you need to read the documentation. You need to have the the courage to go through the documentation and start reading line by line. Okay, so for this webinar, I will show you the basics, and I'm really counting on you to go and dig more into the technology. Okay, so this is the documentation. Let's try to create now our first application. So to start your application, or to start creating your application, you need to install in your machine, you need to install the Angular CLI. So you can just Google Angular CLI install. Okay, of course, you will find the Angular documentation way. Of course, do not try any other way. And it will show you how to install Angular globally. So you will copy this, then you will go to your machine, open the terminal, or open Bash, whatever you have, or CMD. Of course, if you have Node installed, you need to have before this. If you don't have Node, I don't know, for the ones that didn't have Node yet. So you need to download Node.js. This is the basics. And then if you have this on your machine, you can open the terminal and run the application npm install -globally Angular CLI. Of course, I will not do this now. I already have Angular on my machine. Now, if you done that, if you install the CLI, you will be good to go. And you will be able to create your application in Angular. So how to create a new application? It's actually simple. You can just go with ng for Angular, and then new, the keyword new, and then the name of your app. Yeah. Okay, so you can call it whatever. Of course, do not have a name with space. So if you want to call it, I don't know, SHA app, you cannot go by space like this. You cannot go by SHA space app. You can just go with dash or this, and then something like this. Okay, do not have spaces. Okay, also again, so now let's imagine that we want to create an application called Halim. Okay, and we hit enter. So Angular, when it first starts, It will ask you, do you want to have routing? That means, is your application is going to be multiple pages? So you will have multiple pages in your application and you want some routing to move from a page to another. So you will say yes. I don't know, depending on you, but for this example, we will go with yes. And then it will ask you, what is the type of the style sheet that you want? Do you want to have SCSS, which is SAS, or less, or CSS? Okay, for the ones that doesn't know what are those three, those are just another way to style elements. SAS is like CSS with superpowers, and uh, SCSS, sorry, and SAS both the same, not the same syntax, and less. So for this example, also we will go with CSS. We will go with the most simpler one, and we hit enter. So it will start to create your application. But of course, we will not do that. I already done it. It may take a couple of minutes for you guys, so don't worry about it. Okay, so I'll just delete it, and I have here my test app. Okay, so let's open our test app.
Hello, Halim. We have a question from Mustafa. He's saying, can we start creating a project with only VS Code, or CLI is an obligation for Angular?
With VS Code. So with only VS Code. Basically, the terminal of VS Code is a CLI. So,
I think he's asking if we need to install the Angular CLI, or maybe.
no, we need to install the Angular CLI. So here, no, I think by CLI he meant a command line interface. Slim, and he's talking about the terminal. So
Mustafa, if you would like to give us some input.
So, okay, just a quick answer maybe. If you are talking about installing the Angular CLI, yes, it is necessity, of course, to install Angular on your machine. And if you are talking about VS Code, like the VS Code like this, to open an application or to create an application, to have like to have VS Code, and then you will open a terminal. So you can execute the same commands here. Okay.
Directly from VS Code, but you need to install the CLI on your computer.
Yeah, of course.
We can move.
Okay.
Thank you, Halim.
So, thank you for your question. So, when you create your app, when you create your Angular app, you will end up with this bunch of files, which are a lot of files, I know, but let's do a quick summer up over what are the files important now, and then later on you can dig deeper. So the node models, the .angular and the .vs code, not important, I will not talk about those. The node models contains all of the. Remember when I mentioned that Angular is a bunch of functions that are ready to use? So all of the functions that you can use are here, and the libraries, the new libraries that you can install, you can have new libraries, are also here. So you don't need to even open this one. Okay, what we will care about the most is the SRC. The SRC folder, which contains the index.html, which everything will be displayed here in this page. Okay, more specifically, it's going to be everything will be displayed in this app.root. Okay, but we also don't touch this one. We only care, for now at least, we will only care about this part, which is the app itself. So as I mentioned, we will have a big app.html, we will have the app.css, and the app.ts. Okay, TypeScript. We can delete this spec. It's for testing. We will not do that now. So we have the TypeScript, which contains the JavaScript part or the TypeScript part. We have the HTML and the CSS. Okay, so this is our HTML page. Let's talk about this router outlet later on. I will even comment it, so we don't need it now. Okay, so this is the main HTML. This is everything will be displayed, should be here, should be in this router outlet. So let's display something like, for example, H1, let's say hello world, and let's see if it's gonna be displayed. So we will go by, if you want to start your application, your Angular application, you can go by opening a new terminal, and you will go by ng serve. Okay, this is will open the application, or this is will run the application. And if you want to run your application and open it at the same time, you will go by ng serve -o or --open. Both will work fine. So -o. Now let's wait a little bit, and this will open our application. Okay, so now you will see that this application or our application have been opened, and we have here hello world. So this is the main HTML, and this is the main CSS, which is the biggest CSS file. So we will go, for example, here by H1 will be color red. You don't have to link the HTML with the CSS, they are already linked. Okay. And of course, the HTML structure, which is this one, you don't need it also, because the component is part of the page. And this is the main page. And you'll see here already the structure we have. So this is the main page. Everything will be displayed here, but you don't have to modify this. Okay, so if I have here a lot of hello words, all of the hello words will be displayed. Okay, so this is simple. We have, if we focus about only this part, of course, it's going to be simple. So we have an HTML, a CSS, and TypeScript that we will talk about it in a moment. And we can create our own things. So for example, we can create our navbar. So we can go by, let's call it nav.navbar. This is a navbar. We can have, for example, here items like anchor tags with home or whatever. It's just an example here. So this is our navbar. Okay. And we will have maybe video, or we can call it I don't know, section 1. Let's call it section 1, or header, or hero section. That will contain some design or something like that. And here we will have our footer. Let's call it footer, just .footer. Okay, just to make those visible, let's make some design. So let's go here, .navbar will be, the background will be red, the height will be, I don't know, 70 pixels, and we will have a width of 100%. Okay, so it's just, this is our navbar. The color is ugly, so just modify it. Here it's just for the example, so we don't actually care. So this is our navbar. And let's go by display flex, justify height, content, space evenly, or space between, doesn't actually matter, and align items center. Okay, so let's imagine that we have, this is our navbar. It's ugly, I know, but it's just for the example. And now let's go for the hero section, which will have a height of 70 view height, and then a width of 100%, and a background color will be gray. And this is just for the example's sake. And after that, we will have the other section, which is the footer. So we have a question. So height, it's going to be 100 pixels. The width is going to be 100%. And the background color will be blue.
Halim,
Okay. Yes.
Sorry for interrupting. We have two questions. First one from Panayotis. He's asking, how are the different files connected?
It's
And
okay.
Godfrey is just asking if you can zoom a bit because they cannot see the screen.
Okay, cool. So, okay, so for your question, Panayotis, when Angular create a component, okay, so when Angular creates a component, you will find the connection between the HTML file and the CSS file inside of the TypeScript file. Okay, so if we go to the TypeScript file here, okay, let's create a component and I will show you in that component. For the main component, which is the app component, it's already linked using the Angular will link it. But when we create a component, you will see how those are connected. Okay, so let's go and do that. Here we have the app.html that is containing everything, which is the thing that we didn't want to do in the first place. We want to separate the navbar and the hero section and the footer. So let's create another component. Okay, so to do that, let me zoom out a little bit. View appearance, zoom out. Okay, just a little bit. Okay, so let me open another terminal. Of course, this one I will not close it. This is what keeps my application running. And I will create another one. Here, I will be creating, instead of having all of the code in one file, as we talked here, okay, instead of having everything in one file, which is the app.html, I will create a navbar of, I will create a navbar component and a video component, not the video component, it's a hero component, okay, and a footer component. Okay, so let's do that. To create a component in Angular, you need to go with the command ng generate component and then the name of the component. So for our example, it's going to be navbar. Okay, and if you want a shortcut, if you don't remember this, you can just go with ng g, which is the letter G or G. I don't know how to spell it. So ng generate component, ng gc or C, and then the name of the component. So navbar in my case. Navbar. Hit enter, and then you will have a folder created here. So let's wait. Okay, so you will have a folder created here that contains, I will delete the spec as usual. So that contains navbar.ts, navbar.html, and navbar.css. Okay, so each part are linked, they are linked to each other here in the TypeScript file. So you can see here in the TypeScript file, we will have the template will be the navbar.html and the style sheet will be the navbar.css. Okay, so this is how they are actually linked in the TypeScript file.
So technically, Angular is taking care of linking the files inside folders under the hood, so you don't do it yourself. So, and that's the purpose of the framework.
Yes,
it takes
exactly.
a lot of work from you, automate it, and you can just generate it through commands in the CLI.
Exactly. So Angular will like give you more time to focus on the actual code instead of focusing on creating the structure. Like the structure will be automatically generated from Angular. So let's create the other two components, and then we will create the code for those two components. So we will go with ng generate the second component, which is going to be hero, and we will create a third component that is called footer. Okay, so we will have the hero footer. Of course, delete the spec. If you want to create, there is --escape spec, but don't want to confuse you more. Just delete the file spec and that's it. So you will have now three components. So what we can do, instead of having all of the code into one file, we will take the navbar HTML, we will take it to the navbar component here, and the navbar CSS, also we will take it to the navbar.css, and also the we will do the same thing for the other two components. So we will go and we will take the hero CSS to the hero CSS file, and we will take the footer CSS to the footer CSS file. We will do the same thing for the HTML. So the hero section, I know it's empty, but imagine that we have code there. So we will put the hero there, and the footer, we will do the same thing here. Okay, cool. So now we will have our footer component and the hero component and the navbar component, but the app is empty now. So we didn't display anything inside of the app. So you'll see here our website is going to be empty. Nothing will be here. So how can we display the footer and the navbar and the hero inside of the app component? Simply, we can just call the navbar and the hero and the footer by just calling the names here that we will find in TS. So every element, every component in TS have this selector. You can call it as the tag name of the component. So everything inside of that component will be like an HTML tag. So we can take this app.navbar and we can display it in the app. So now if I save just by this, all of the navbar code will be here. Same thing can goes for the hero. So we will go by app-hero. This will display the hero. Then app-footer. This will display the footer. Okay, and that's it. So now we will have the three components into the app component. It's like as simple as that. You don't need to have like the whole code here. Instead, you can have mini codes inside of the, for example, for the navbar, you will have the whole code. So you will know if you have a problem in the navbar, you will go directly into the navbar component. Okay. If you have a problem with the hero, you will go to the hero. If you have a problem with the footer, you will go to the footer. And of course, yes.
I would like to add something in answer to Mustafa, who's asking. So we are creating HTML, CSS, and JS in a separated files for each component. So that's the case. And this is a principle called separation of concerns. So the more you split the component into smaller components, the less trouble you can go through. Okay, you will have a lot of folders and files and so on, rather than having everything in one file, but that helps you target the bug or the code that needs to be refactored faster and easier. And also from a user's perspective, if you have your components separated in smaller pieces, when you have a bug, it will affect only that component. It will not break the whole page as if when you have everything in one big document. Sorry, Halim, you can continue.
Thank you very much for adding that. Okay, so again, so we can create multiple components. Like in this example, we have the navbar component, and we have the hero component, and we have the footer are displayed like nav, hero, and footer are displayed in the app component. Okay, so now what if we don't want to have just one, because in this way, if we want to display everything into the app component, we will end up with one page. But what if we don't want to have one page? What if we don't want to render all of those here? Okay, let's imagine that we have multiple pages. So we will have a page called home. So here, the page called home. Okay, And we will have another page that is called about. So we will go with about. Okay, and inside of home, we need a navbar, and we need the hero, and we need the footer. And for the about, we will need also the navbar, and we will need, let's add another component here. Let's imagine that we have a fourth component that is called about, or let's call it info. This will have some information. So let's imagine that about needs info and needs the footer. Okay, so this is the cool thing again about Angular or about the JavaScript frameworks. You can use the navbar in the home, and you can use it also in about. You can use the hero in home, and you can use the footer and the info in the about, and you can use the footer also in home. So it's going to be like displaying the items needed inside of the components that you want. So let's go and create the extra component. So for example, let's start with the info. Okay, let's go with ng generate component info. Okay. So now we will have info. This is gonna be maybe just a small paragraph. Let's have this as a small paragraph. So paragraph, and inside of it lorem text. So this is the info, just an example. Okay, and now let's create the component home and the component about. So let's go and display the component. Let's create ng generate component home and ng generate component about. So those will be pages, okay, but you can call them also components. Okay, cool. So now we want to display the navbar, the hero section, and the footer inside of the home. Okay, so we will take it from the app. So we will display those inside of home component. Of course, I will delete this spec. So we will display all of those in home, and inside of the about page, we will display similar thing. So the navbar and the footer, but instead of the hero, we will have the info component. Okay, so now we have displayed the inside of the home, we will display the navbar, the hero, and the footer, and in the about, we will display the navbar, the info, and the footer. But now, in our app.html, what we will display? Are we going to display the app-home? Okay, this will display for us the home, or we will display the about page. Okay, we want, if we go to /nothing, this will display the home. If we go to /about, this will display, for example, for us the about page. Okay, so how can we do that? We can do this using the router. So here, we will not display anything, but instead we will have this router outlet that I commented. Okay, this router outlet is what will organize the dispatch of the pages. So how the pages, or what is the page, will display based on which route. So this is the route that will organize that, but where we can set which page will be displayed on which endpoint or on which route. So we can go here to the app routing module.ts. So here, if you go here, you will find this code, which will set the route, the navigation between pages, and you will find here a small array called routes ready for you to use. That's why I love Angular, actually. 99% of the things are already there. So what you can do inside of this routes, you will say, open curly bracket, if you have the path of nothing, like just localhost 4200, you will display the component that will be displayed. It's going to be home component, and you will import the home component. If you hit enter, it will import it automatically. So this is for the /nothing. And if you have, you will do the same thing here. If you go by /about, then you will display the component about. Sorry, the about. enter, and that's it. That's simply what you can do. So /nothing, localhost /nothing will display the home. If you go to /about, you will find the about page. How cool is that? Like without even creating a lot of, I don't know, routes. For the ones that worked with React and they didn't use Angular, they know the pain if you want to create routes between pages. But in Angular, simply it's built in. You can just decide which component go on which path. Okay. So now we can just leave this router outlet and nothing more in the app component.html. So we don't need anything more. Now we have our pages and our smaller components. So if we go back here, so you will see that now the router outlet will decide which component to display. Okay, so whether it's going to be displaying home or it's going to be displaying about. So it will decide. And if we display the home will display the nav, the hero, the footer. And if we display the about, it's going to display the nav, the info, the footer. Okay, so the first thing that we win or that we gain here, that we don't have to write the same code 2 times. Imagine if we don't have reusable code here. If we don't have reusable code, then instead of calling navbar in both components, instead of going home, like to go to this home component and call just navbar, we will copy paste this code and we will go to the about page and we will paste this code also. It's going to be a mess, like copy pasting a lot of code. So this one will be a separate footer and this one's going to be separate navbar. So if it's the same navbar, why we create it, or why do we have to recreate it again and again? So we just create it one time and we can invoke it multiple times. Okay, so for now, is this clear? I'm used to getting answers. Anyway, so a more cooler way to do this. So here we will have the app.navbar displayed and the app.footer displayed. The only thing that will be modified is the app.hero. So for this, like here we will have navbar and here we will have a footer. And here we will have also a navbar and here we will have a footer. So only the content will be modified. So what we can do also is, instead of having the navbar here and the footer here and the navbar also here and the footer here, we can do some trick or small trick that we can go by displaying the the navbar here and the footer under the router outlet, and then the router outlet will decide only what is the content, will decide only the content that will be displayed in the web page. Okay, so what we can do is, instead of having footer here and navbar here, and in the same about page, we don't have a navbar here, we don't have a footer here. Okay, so the router outlet now will only control, if we go back to the page, the router outlet will only control the content, what it will be displayed, whether it's going to be displaying the hero section or the about section or the info section, sorry. Okay, and then we will go back to the home page or to the app, sorry, page, and we will wrap this between the navbar, app-navbar, and we will do the same thing for the footer. Okay, so now all of the content, we will do the same thing, but instead of invoking the app navbar and the app footer in the home and on the about, we can just invoke them one time in the app component, and then everything else will be decided by the router outlet. So the router outlet will decide which component that we will display in the middle, in between the navbar and the footer. Okay?
We have another question. Vasilis is asking if we create a button to take us to another page, do we use the route code for Angular then?
Yes. So, for example, let's take the example of the navbar. Okay. So let's imagine that we have here one to take us to home and one to take us to about. Okay. So let's delete the rest. Okay. So let's go back here and let me just space. This is going to be space around. Just design sake. Okay, so here we will have the home and about. If we click on about, should take us to about. If we click on home, should take us to home. Usually, what we used to do is to go here and add, for example, slash nothing. This will take us to slash home, and this will take us to slash about. Okay, so if I click on slash about, this will take me to about. If I click here, it will take me to home. And it will work fine. It's cool. That's fine. You can go with the anchor tag and it will take you from a route to another. Like you can navigate using routes. Okay, but if you want to do that the angular way or the, let's just say, more or less, if you have a button here, okay, that will say take me to home, this button cannot take the property href. Okay, or if you have a div, but you get the point. Like if you have a image that will take you to home. Okay, you cannot add the property href. So you want to create a function that will take you to home. So the way to do that, the Angular way, is to go and create a function in the TypeScript file, and then that function will navigate you to the URL that you want. To do that, it's going to be a little bit weird for the ones that they didn't use Angular, but it's okay. This is the syntax of it, and we don't actually have time to, to learn why the syntax is like this, but let's go through the syntax. You need to import something that is called router. Okay, and then you will go here inside of the class navbar. This is the class navbar. That means all of the functions that are related to the navbar component will be inside of this class. So you will create a constructor and you will say private router is equal to router. It's like we imported the router, the function. This is, as I mentioned, it's a bunch of functions. And then whenever you need one of those functions, you will call it. So here I called router function, and then I more specified, I name it router. So now it's time to create my function. So I'll create a function called move to home or take me home. This is the name of a song, by the way, Take Me Home. Anyway, so this function take me home, what it will do, it will use this router function. So it will go by this keyword dot router dot navigate by URL. I know it's weird. This will take me to slash nothing. Okay, so this is the function take me home. It's gonna navigate me to slash nothing. And to invoke this function with the button, usually in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, we have the method onClick. Okay, and then you will have the function take me home. But in Angular, we have another way, which is something like this. Parenthesis, click, that means onClick, invoke the function take me home. So create whatever function that you want. For example, function console.log. We will test some functions. And then if you click on that button, it will take you home. So if we go back, click take me home, we are already home. So if we go to about and click on take me home, it will take us home. So the proper way to do this is to create, for example, a function that is called take me home and another function that is called take me to about. And here it's going to be slash about. Okay, and then for the anchor tags, if you have anchor tags, you can go, instead of the href, you can go click, take me to about, and here it's going to be click, take me home, like this one. So take me home like this one. Okay, let's delete this one. Now we will have the two functions. So one will take you home. So I think it's reversed. So here take me about, and here take me home. Okay, so the home one will take you to the home, and the about will take you to the about.
And we have another question. Sorry, Halim.
Okay.
Actually, it's the continuity of what we are doing since we are building the navbar. Vasileos is asking, and if we want to highlight where we are to make it bold or a different color. I mean, for the active link in the navbar.
Okay, so for that you can take the value of the route from the router. There is a method, and then you will create a condition. Based on that condition, you will display what is the color. But it's gonna be a little bit out of context. I just mentioned the answer, but if we want to do it, it will take like minimum of 5 minutes with the explanation. So sorry for that.
Yeah, you can actually, Vasileos, you can do it the way that Halim mentioned, or using just CSS in the CSS file by
Yeah.
targeting, for example, creating a class called active link, and then adding it dynamically with JS. So you can actually Google how to do that. It's not that difficult.
Yeah, but yeah, the way of CSS, it will not work if you refresh, but you need always to check you will go to ng on init, and it's gonna be a little bit of mess. You're welcome, Facilius. And yes, Panayotis, it's Country Road, Take Me Home. That was the song that I meant. Okay, so now let's make our code a little bit more reusable. Okay, so instead of having two functions, instead of creating two functions, how about we create one function called move, and this function will take a parameter. So move to, okay, the two here, it's gonna be decided from the HTML part. So it's gonna be a string. So in TypeScript, you need to define what is the type of everything. So for this, it will take a parameter. The parameter needs to be a string. Okay, so this will do the same thing. This.router.navigate by URL, instead of about, it's gonna be to. And then when we invoke this function move, now we will go with the function move. If we have the home, we will invoke it with /nothing. If we have move and we want to have to about, we will go to /about. Okay, so it's just now one function that will do the job for the things, because later on, imagine if we have five or four routes, so it's going to be 5 or 4 functions, which is ridiculous. So that's why we create one function, and that function we will use it multiple times with different parameters. So one time we will invoke the function with about, and one time we will invoke the function with the just slash, so to take us home. So okay, so now we have the navigation between pages to create some sort of navigations. Okay, so I think we are already exceeding times. I was hoping if we have more time to talk about services and two-ways data binding, but I think we already exceeded the time, Slim.
Definitely, yes. I didn't want to interrupt. So, yes, we can.
So
I didn't hear you.
I said I got carried away with the
Yeah.
So I think that's it. Maybe we will do round 2 if you want,
we
guys.
can do that. If you are interested, we can make a poll on our community server, and if we have many people interested in moving forward with Angular and 2, we will definitely plan it. So that was it for today. I hope that it was beneficial to get exposed to Angular if you didn't use it before. Vasilis is saying it was a very instructive introduction.
Thank you.
Thank you Vasilis. Thank you, Halim, for the nice walk around about Angular. Thank you all for being
Right.
here, and we hope to see you all very
Hopefully. Thank you, everyone, and have a nice rest of the week. And bye, guys.
soon. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye bye.